think mobile advertising has been a sphere which has excited a lot of people in the world, whether they are handset makers, publishers, telecom operators. I think everybody is excited and believe that mobile advertising is a way that they can overcome the way they're seeing the revenues go down of late. I think where we see a big difference for ourselves is, for us, the user comes much before the mobile advertising does. So we are building experiences which users value. And I think that's what makes a successful media. And I think a lot of companies looking at how they can integrate an ad there, how they can integrate an ad there. But I think what's important is if you're creating products which are adding value to users, and if that objective is well achieved, I'm sure advertising opportunities around it can easily be blended. And I think that's where we've put a lot of our focus, a lot of our effort over the last 5 years when we've been doing business, to think user first and build that as a culture within the organization. And while we do that, the second part is that we can think of users first, but to reach out to those users, the same people who are actually eyeing the mobile ad market, how is it that we can bring them all together and create an ecosystem which works? So the primary markets for us, for businesses in Asia are India and Indonesia. Those are markets where we see huge growth and large subscriber base. So almost 80 to 85% of our overall users would be coming from these two markets. The rest of the users would be pretty much spread across the other APAC markets like Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam. So that's the other markets where we're still in the early stages of business. So I think that's where we've had more success in terms of markets. And in terms of products, I think the largest success for us has been on our initial product, which we launched a few years back, which is SMS 2.0, which again is actually something which works quite well on feature phones, which is the kind of phones which people in these mass markets would carry. And messaging is what we realize a function which they do most often because their devices are not so capable to watch videos and do browser kind of content. So we create a product which upgrades their messaging experience, and while we do that, we create opportunities for media content and advertising to be blended with that messaging. It's interesting because we started out Affle 5 years back, and in the last 5 years, every year has been the year of mobile advertising, and things haven't moved at the pace anybody predicted. I think 5 years back people were as bullish around it, but I think we've seen a lot of changes happen which make us believe that right now is the right time. Because I think 5 years back what we were seeing, and through that journey, was people were primarily using the device pretty much for communication. And when the device is being used for communication, blending advertising in it is always challenging. Because the user feels spammed, he feels that this is not what he asked for. He wanted to connect with a friend, why is he seeing an ad? I think that user behavior is changing. So that user behavior is changing not because of what Affle is doing or what any other company like us is doing. It's because the whole market has evolved. Carriers are today more focused on selling data plans and data services. Users are buying better devices, better browser connectivity, and all those devices are coming in at price points which is lesser than what they paid for their first phone. So it's coming in at affordable prices, it's easier to access. And I think that user behavior, that user inertia change where users are now using a lot more content services makes it far easier for any mobile advertising company to look at ways of blending advertising. So it's pretty much driven by users, supported by the ecosystem, but I think the user moving in that direction is possibly the most important thing. That's a trend which we've seen, and I think over the last 2 years that trend has become very obvious in terms of how consumers are upgrading from feature phones to very smart devices which are pretty much having greater computing power than the PCs which we would have had a few years back. I think as a company we've evolved our products to ensure that we can reach out to the most number of these users also. And we just launched our new product called Pinch. And given that Affle's primary expertise is around mobile messaging and mobile advertising, I think even on that product we've tried to blend these two and create a great value proposition for a user first. And the way we do it is by creating a way in which consumers across platforms, so whether the guy is using an iPhone or an Android or the cheapest of the Java phones, so pretty much any and every phone the user is using, he can now message his friends over data, which means he's not paying a single cent of SMS tariff and still manage the entire communication with all his friends. And while he does that, he gets a lot of other location services, social gaming services, which are well blended with his messaging experience. So that is where we believe we've worked a lot on our messaging strengths to create something which is as appealing to a smartphone user as to the most basic feature phone users, and also at the same time creates a compelling proposition where engaging advertising can happen on it. So it's not just banner placement, because that can pretty much happen anywhere, but how brands can build a greater relationship by leveraging location information, by leveraging social information, by integrating social gaming elements. And I think that's where we see advertising evolving. I think banners and click-throughs are good to have, but I think most advertisers have evolved beyond that and are looking at creating more engaging touch points with users. So